Okay, guys. I think the next topic I really want to discuss is really CES 2022, the news that came out of it, and also how the big players rated. Surprisingly, the big players this time also include Sony, who showed off their new VR headset, or at least showed the specs of the new VR headset during CES. So yeah, let's roll into it. And what I'll do is I'll go by the order in which these guys actually presented their press events and keynotes. So first we'll start with AMD. Now, AMD's focus seemed to be a lot with their mobile strategy and mobile products. So what they did, they showed off the mobile Ryzen 6000 CPUs on 6nm, codename Rembrandt, and it's already out. There's a couple of laptops already out with it. Now what they have is Zen 3 Plus cores, and it's up to 8 cores, 16 threads. But really, what the focus has been is power management features. So they're looking at kind of performance per watt, really kind of producing, let's say, laptops with a big battery life. And to that effect, have 50 new and enhanced power management features, including something they've called adaptive power management in a new deep sleep state, whatever the hell that means. Right? And it's claimed that the 6000 series mobile CPUs use 30% less power versus the previous gen from AMD, which is significant because AMD have always been relatively, certainly lately, battery friendly. Let's call it that. Now they're saying that they'll use 30% less power for video conferencing. They'll be able to achieve 24 hours or 24-hour battery life for movie playback. But I think really what the biggest changes here for Ryzen 6000 is the inclusion of a much more powerful integrated GPU, iGPU, using RDNA 2. Yeah, 12 CUs, clocks up to 2.4 gigahertz, and it's really their first PC APU with ray tracing. Okay, and it supports the latest kind of like connectivity in I/O, USB 4, PCIe 4, LPDDR5, Wi-Fi 6E, and the latest iteration of Bluetooth 5.2. Yeah, and it actually this time boosts up to 5 gigahertz. They claim to achieve 11% more single-threaded performance, 28% more multi-threaded performance, 1.3 times performance for CPUs versus last gen, but quite impressively, 2.1 times performance for the iGPU versus last gen, which used Vega. Okay, and now AMD are getting or moving up to a similar sort of clock speed or gigahertz kind of numbers to Intel. So really very, very impressive on the actual kind of laptop front, and it really did kind of like pique my interest. Now further to that, what they've also talked about is a new set of mobile discrete graphics chips, 6000M, the highest end being the 6850M XT, quite a mouthful as per usual, and RX 6000 S series for thin lights and ultra thins. And again, if you get an AMD advantage, which means all AMD, a number of advantages. Obviously, Smart Shift, which they've updated to work a little bit better. It's called Smart Shift Max now. They've got capability where you can move from IGP to discrete GPUs just to save battery life. So a much more well-rounded ecosystem. To me, even though I would say that Intel are still the performance kings with Alder Lake, it just strikes me as that AMD are putting a lot more effort in their laptops, and it's a very compelling sort of offering they have, especially when you go all AMD. Usually the kind of AMD laptops seem to be that much more kind of like they're cheaper, they're better value for money from what I can see.
Well, they were.
Yeah, they were definitely. But I mean, even like Alienware are getting in the act. I mean, they've got an M17 R5, which is the highest end parts you can get with AMD laptops. And yeah, and that's for me that's pretty much unheard of. I mean, Alienware have been mostly in Intel and Nvidia shop, for
Yeah.
a long
Well,
time.
I think they started it with the last series. I mean, I got a gaming laptop. What feels like last year now at this point, or at least a year ago, in terms of the point that point. And I got what was it, a 5800H or so, whichever one it was, with a 3070 inside. Yeah, and that runs really really nice. So yeah, I think the 6000 series must, if it is 30% more efficient, yeah, even better.
I mean, I've got to say, I'm actually very tempted. If I don't get the MacBook M1 or the way I'm going, probably M2, Pro, right? Then I could be tempted by an all AMD laptop. Not because it's the fastest performer, but just because I just like the idea of an all AMD laptop doing smart things and getting a little bit more out of the components in there. Yeah.
Or even just, I'm interested to see. I should go. I'll go do some research. I
Mm.
think a bit later, but how well the IGBU actually works, and and whether actually it would be perfect for just a very portable, thin laptop,
Yeah, yeah,
for that sort of thing.
yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what I believe is its main advantage. I think the AMD
Mm-hmm.
chips, what I understand, work best in low watt, thin and light, and ultra thin laptops.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's where they're very competitive so far with the Intel parts. But Intel do much better out of bigger laptops, the desktop replacements,
yeah, yeah.
because they seem to scale up with wattage,
Mm-hmm.
much better than the AMD parts. But again, I'm just very interested in maybe kind of an all AMD laptop with these smart things like smart shift and smart memory access,
Mm.
just getting more out of it. And they seem to have been putting a lot of effort in, I'd say, power consumption and battery life. So this is
Mm.
quite important things. In saying all of that, the big news actually coming out of AMD, I guess two things. The first thing is they talked about the 5800X 3D CPU, which at the time they did the keynote, they were saying this is basically the fastest gaming CPU on the planet, which may or may not be true because obviously Intel have got their KS part coming out. Yeah, but this thing uses 3D cache, which we talked about. Now it's only 5800X, and they're not going to roll it out for any other models or any other SKUs. But then what they also said, and they announced, was they're going to have Zen 4 on 5nm the second half of this year, second half of
Mm.
2022. They basically talked up this pre-production chip for Zen 4 running all cores. I think they said all cores over 5 gigahertz. All cores 5 gigahertz, right? And if you think right now, usually the all core gigahertz numbers are usually between 3 and 4,
Yeah,
maybe just
yeah.
over 4. So that's significant. They've never been able to kind of match Intel in terms of clock speed, but now they seem to be kind of getting close to that. This
Mm.
thing will also have the 3D cache stuff, so which kind of leads me to think, well, that's probably why we're not seeing kind of like many 3D cache CPUs from the existing generation we have now.
Yeah, yeah,
They're saving this for Zen 4, is what it sounds like to me.
yeah.
So all in all, I just feel that AMD are kind of marching forward. Yeah, they're
Mm.
marching forward, and before I forget, they also talked a little bit about what is it? Radeon Super Resolution. Yeah, Radeon Super Resolution, which is kind of like a FSR,
Mm-hmm.
but it basically works at a driver level. So effectively, for almost all your games on the PC, you'll be able to pretty much run it in RSR. There's no developer intervention required or patching or anything like that. All you need to do, switch on RSR from the driver, go to your game, load the resolution, and RSR does the rest. That's
Hmm.
pretty much it.
Interesting. Do you know which graphics cards it was supporting it?
Not sure actually. I mean, I wouldn't be. I don't think it's just the latest cards. I'm
Mm.
I'm I'm guessing that you're kind of I found, is it a 5000
Mine,
series?
yeah,
Yeah,
mine's a 5700 XT.
I imagine
I'll have
it'll
to
work
check.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's down to the adrenaline drivers. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I imagine it will work for that. Yeah,
Cool.
but that for me, that's a good move.
Mm.
It also explains why Nvidia did what they did. They have a similar equivalent. I don't know if it's either AMD felt they needed to respond, or Nvidia basically caught wind of this and said we need to respond.
I think I think Nvidia knew what was coming.
Yeah, and you can imagine, right, that this is going to be a big plus for a PC gamer. You know,
Mm.
it's just like a Switch. It's as close to basically having a Switch for upscaling as I've seen. That's what it is. So that's pretty cool. AMD still marching ahead. Zen 4, I think, is something that could be extremely impressive. I feel that AMD are really making inroads into laptop. They haven't got the performance crown as far as laptops are concerned,
Mm.
but
Mm.
what they're doing in their standard for laptops, and Intel have got their own standard also. But I just feel that the AMD standard is really, really coming together quite quickly, and it kind of makes me feel that I kind of want one. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. But yeah, I mean, like the competition, continues. I think. All right. Now let's quickly move to Nvidia, who came next. Yeah, Nvidia. Try as I might, I can never say anything positive about them. And I've been trying for 6 months. Every time we get news out of these conferences, for 6 months, I've been trying to say something positive, and I just can't. I can't find anything.
I don't say that. I've just bought some of their stock.
Their stock, I'm sure, will carry on shooting up, right? But the way
Right.
the way they treat kind of like consumers is I'm just finding it less than impressive, and I think the consumer, obviously I'm not talking about kind of a corporates or enterprise. I think in that space they're doing obviously extremely well, and even at the consumer level, there's still the de facto graphics and GPU. The de facto graphics card in GPU, but they do stuff that is so, to my mind, WTF all the
Mm.
time. It's so WTF, right? And this time, what they've done is they've released, or they're saying they're releasing the 3090 Ti or Ti, depending what your preference is. The 3090 was already a ludicrously expensive, difficult to come by GPU that, let's be honest, no one really needs or can afford, right? Unless you're an extremely wealthy gamer, right? And this 3090 Ti is pretty much not available in the world yet, since they kind of announced it. So it hasn't come out when they said it was going to come out, and really smells of, it's either a absolute paper launch or just pure vaporware at the moment. And look, to go through some of the stats, and you'll probably pay about $2,000 for it. It's like 40 shader teraflops versus the standard 3090's 36. 78 RT teraflops versus 69. And 320 tensor teraflops versus 285. So, if I'm being honest, it doesn't blow the 39 out of the water, and it's not out in the world yet. So I just kind of have to ask myself, what's the point of it? But
Well,
it's a bit of marketing.
my only question is, did Jensen take it out of an oven?
He didn't even announce it himself. Someone else did, right? But it's so WTF that this thing basically consumes 450 watts. 450 watts. It's significant, and that's versus the standard 3090 is 350 watts. So they're doing all of this by pushing up the power consumption. And again, not available yet. Will it ever be available? Don't know.
Well, I guess they want to get it out whilst the supply is still low and the prices are high. So
It just feels like marketing nonsense, to be honest.
Mhm.
We'll see where this develops. I mean, we can expect a new iteration, a new generation of GPUs. I think at the end of the year, maybe start of next, from Nvidia and AMD, and with Intel joining the party as well with their ARC GPUs, so kind of all to play for. I just wish Nvidia would stop just kind of feeding us BS.
Where's the beyond the CES 2022? What's the trajectory of all of these companies? Who do you think is going to be the leader of the next 5 years, 10 years?
It's interesting, yeah.
Are these guys so ahead of everybody else? The only competition they really got is Apple, but Apple for Apple's own products, or
No,
is someone going to come from the sidelines with some quantum computing stuff, or
I think in the x86 and also the GPU market, you're probably looking at a three-way dance between AMD, Intel, and Nvidia for the next 5 years. That would seem realistic to me. I think Nvidia doesn't have CPUs per se for the consumer market, but it just depends what their plans were for ARM before the purchase fell through. But I think those plans are probably for enterprise rather than it being for consumer level. So that's what I'm expecting. I would expect in the next 10 years, however, for either somebody to do something with ARM or RISC-V in the consumer space. I could see that happening. I can't, for the life of me at the moment, see any other companies on the horizon who are going to challenge in terms of kind of GPUs necessarily.
I would say the only ones are probably unknown ones in China.
Yeah, but they're so far
I
behind.
mean, by 10 years, I don't think they're that far behind. I suspect they can quickly pick up. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything come out of China that I would really want to buy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, Intel's going to be strong competition, I think.
So it's I'm asking slightly from a buying stocks perspective, selfish. You've basically spread the money across all three of those, and you should be.
Yeah, I would.
Well, I think that is partly the market at the moment is because it's split between. I mean, gamers is probably a small portion of it. The Bitcoin miners are probably predominant. I think
they're all enterprise players, Al. That's where the revenue's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they've all got big plans in terms of enterprise as well. That's business is sticky because once you get into a data center, it's very difficult to get out of it, and those contracts are big contracts.
Yeah.
I just see that continuing, and I see that, and the reason I see that continuing is simply because the three of these companies are so in competition with one another now. It wasn't like it was 5 years ago where Intel was running the CPU kind of show, and Nvidia was running the GPU show, and then you had AMD well below them, who had kind of their victories now and again, but never consistently. But now what you're seeing is like every year a different product come out that's basically not nudging ahead of everybody else, and then one of the other guys brings out something else, and they'll nudge ahead. Especially now that Intel have got kind of Alder Lake and they're coming onto the market with ARC. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that for the next 5 years. And maybe after 5 years, right, one of the three or two of the three will basically come out on top in certain areas. So that's how I see things going. And again, these guys are also making investments with FPGAs. I mean, AMD have just bought Xilinx, which is one of the two with Altera, the two big FPGA players. They're going to do something with that. You have to watch that space, I feel. Right? I mean, Intel have had, I think, Altera for a while now, but they haven't really done much of it. So it's just like, where are they going to take that? And to me, it's probably not consumer, it's probably enterprise.
Yeah.
Something might come out of China. But the thing is, if there was no competition between the three of these guys, right, I'd say there would be a far bigger chance of that happening. That someone kind of like could come along and do a sneak attack on these guys. Right.
Yeah.
But the fact they're in such a heightened mode of competition at the moment, where they're trying to constantly outdo one another, that I think there's less of a chance of that now. Yeah, it's good for us as consumers, but there's just less of a chance now.
Yeah. That's cool.
Let's just talk about Intel very rapidly. What they really talked about really was Alder Lake again. They're bringing out probably the fastest, gaming CPU. Doesn't end right. What they're talking about is the 12900KS, which boosts up to 5.5 gigahertz. I think that's single core though. The chip's already running Hitman 3 with all cores running at 5.2 gigahertz and the E cores running at 4 gigahertz. So basically it's a highly bin chipped. It's not kind of like, new to Intel really, and they say it's coming out end of quarter one. Possibly right now, end of March, right? Now Intel also quite big in the laptop space. For performance laptops, stuff that's desktop replacement, they've got their 12th gen H series. They've got 8 SKUs, 20 kind of laptop designs, and really it goes up to 14 cores, 8 P cores, 6 E cores, 5 gigahertz clock speed, and we're talking about a 40% performance improvement over the last gen of Intel chips. And what they kind of said was there's a 11 to 59% spread across a number of games in terms of performance improvement versus the existing AMD laptop chips. So 5000 series. Now they've also got kind of enthusiast level performance in thin and light in the shape of 12th gen. I think it's called P series. And there they've got 28 new SKUs, 350 plus mobile designs. But I think that's actually across HP and U. Yeah, so desktop replacements, ultra thin, and obviously thin and lights. Yeah, they're doubling down on this. I've always said like the desktop market's comparatively small now. The real PC market is really kind of laptops. That's where the money is. Now they've also got their own version of AMD Advantage, and they've had it for longer than AMD. It's Evo. It's all the Evo spec for laptops, right? So again, Wi-Fi 6E. They've got this thing called Intel Connectivity Performance Suite, dynamic background noise suppression for audio. They're looking for people to have 12th gen H series CPUs, Intel Ox GPUs, and specs like that. Yeah, specs like that. And what I also talked about in CES is the multi-device experience. What that really means that they're putting out hardware which allows your PC to easily communicate to iPhones and Android and use them as second displays. And I thought to myself when I said that, you guys have got to be joking. Do you know how many people have tried that? It's a come to nothing. It just seems like a marketing gimmick. And I actually bought the technology, and actually I don't think they developed it themselves. Okay. What else did they say? For Arc discrete GPUs, I think they're going to have, what I understand is 50 mobile and desktop designs. Yeah, which is going to be quite interesting. So they're going quite big with that. Yeah. And they talked a little bit about Deep Link, which allows the integrated GPU, the CPU, and the discrete GPU to work in tandem on certain types of kind of workloads, which I think is very, very interesting. And I think there was a little bit about XeSS, which is their version of DLSS, which to my mind right now could be one of the best offerings if they get it to work properly. Yeah. So that was really Intel. Nothing new there. They've still got the performance advantage with Alder Lake, but with Zen 4 coming out, they've also got to be mindful of that and step it up. But it's kind of good to see Intel back. And if I was in the market for a performance laptop, desktop replacement, and I didn't really care about portability, honestly, I would buy Intel. No doubt about that.
I think Alder Lake has definitely pinched that market right now.
Yeah, it's ahead now, but and again, Zen 4's coming out at the end of the year. How's it going to look? Then Intel have got their next iteration of chips called Raptor Lake. How's that going to look? So there's that perpetual kind of cycle of competition where they're going to have to keep outdoing one another, and that sort of thing. Which is, to my mind, pretty cool. Then, beyond Intel, beyond Nvidia, beyond AMD, Sony.